Good morning and welcome to episode 3 of How It All Vegan. I am Chris, also known as the Vegan Sheepdog, and I'm really excited again to come up with another episode. Today's guest is Rebecca Hinson, and if you're not familiar with Rebecca, she is a light of positivity, shining light on some information that's not everyone's necessarily paying attention to. We're going to talk about, obviously, veganism and her journey and the things she's done with this, but some of the things that she talks about, including this post that it says, "It's wild to me that people are so afraid of germs, but will gladly consume carcinogens, pesticides, toxins, and chemicals in their food, drinks, skin, and body care every single day." So can't wait to dive into this. Looking forward to a great conversation, and I'm glad you guys are here. So without further ado, Rebecca, good morning. How are you doing?
Good morning. I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. I was excited that you were able to carve out some time. I know, schedules are busy, and we're trying to leave for a vacation, and
Yeah,
to be able to drop this in there, and you be able to slide into some time that we both had available. I really appreciate that.
absolutely. I
Um,
will say
so
you
you,
win the award for getting me up to do the earliest podcast ever. So,
well, I like I've been doing them in the evening because it's usually the quietest time, and today I
for
happen
sure.
to be off work, so kids are still asleep, dogs are being good, so hopefully this all works out. At some point
Right.
I fully expect a sleepy teenager to walk up the stairs behind me, or dogs to come down here, so but we'll see what we get into.
Right.
So you were born and raised in South Carolina, and you now currently reside in North Carolina. And a lot of people may not be familiar from a geographical standpoint or realize that North Carolina is one of the largest states in the country for producing pigs in particular, but livestock overall. You and I were talking before we started. You see some things that some people don't necessarily see all the time, and you know, how has that impacted your life going back to see your family, like where you're at and things you see? What are some of those things, and how do you handle that when you see these things?
Right. So apparently, yeah, North Carolina, I think, is the number one pork producer, you know, pig slaughter place in the world, perhaps. Definitely in the United States. I
Wow.
think it's in the world. But when I moved here almost 2 years ago from South Carolina, and I didn't expect it to necessarily impact me. But when I go home to see my family, it's 2 hours away, and the highway that I travel on, I pass at least 5 factory farms that are off the highway. You can see them. Some of them have. I've tried to take videos of them. I mean, 10 to 15 buildings, warehouses full of animals. I don't know
Wow.
what types of animals. I've tried to like look in because it sometimes looks like that the doors are open, but I can't see in. They're definitely being used. And then I also see a lot more 18 wheelers with animals traveling or empty, which either way, it makes me upset. Like if they're empty or if they're in there. If they're
Yeah.
in there, it might make me more upset because then I can see them and I can see them moving around. But it has been honestly mentally knowing that I live in a state that that encourage not necessarily encourages this, but protects the people who are doing this and these industries. It is very disheartening.
That is disheartening for sure, and without question, it's difficult when you see those transport trucks, whether they're full or they're empty. Because if they're full, you know where those animals are going, and if they're empty, you know what has recently happened. It's definitely difficult to see those and not think about the sentient beings that were inside them or that are currently inside them. Some of the videos, if you look at some of the videos from like LA Save, and Bobby Sudd is a big advocate and person who works a lot with LA Animal Save, and they go to Farmer John's slaughterhouse out in LA. And
Mm.
to see some of the photography that Bobby is able to capture and some of the video of these pigs who have probably never known much or any kindness in these trucks, to see the despair in their eyes, and just it's hard. So I'm fortunate that, where we live, yes, it's a rural community, but we don't see those trucks every day. We do
Yeah.
have we have neighbors across the street that we can hear that, they raise animals for slaughter. We live in an agricultural community, and so we understand that aspect for sure. But I just, knowing that North Carolina is, I think you said, the top producer of pork in the world, that's got to be hard to sit knowing that's around. We have. I had no idea. So a few years ago, one of our boys brought home from school. They sent home Ohio pork producers. Sent home a huge, colorful flyer about the pigs in Ohio, and I had no idea that there were over 22,000 pig farms in Ohio, which is like number 8 in the country at that time.
22,000.
And that,
So, yeah. How many does that mean North Carolina has?
yeah, right.
Uh,
So if
yeah.
Ohio is 8 with 22,000, how many does, I know Iowa is a big producer.
Mm.
I can't imagine like 22,000 pig farms in the state of Ohio. And so again, this last year, the kids were sent home with some um, propaganda from the Ohio Meat Producers organization, and it was right at the end of the year. And my youngest son, he's in kindergarten. He brought it home, and so I'm going to see if I can put something out for the kids. So if they're allowed to bring this propaganda home. This marketing material home, I'm going to see if they can't be provided with, if I can provide some kind of alternative to this, because it's,
Mhm.
you're teaching them, you're brainwashing them one way, that this is the only way, which I think a lot of us have seen, the way we grew up, the way we were raised. My parents weren't vegan, didn't raise me vegan. And, it took almost 36 years of my life before I made that connection. Where were you at in your life? Like, what was it for you that initially started that connection for you to start your journey?
So I, of course, grew up like most 99.9% of Americans with the standard American diet. And I'll give some background because I grew up around a lot of animals. A lot of people who, become vegan, they're like, I never was around animals. I didn't know, how they had personalities and all this. I grew up around
Yeah.
every type of animal possible. We had cows at one time, we had horses, we had a goat. I've had dogs and cats and bunnies and turtles and hamsters. I've literally had almost every type of, quote, pet, companion animal. Obviously, the cows didn't live, they lived in a pasture, but we still kind of played with them and stuff like that. We had one named Snowball who I don't know, I was like 10, so I don't really remember the background story, but apparently his mother died and he had to be bottle fed. He was white. He was so cute. He would run around in the yard and anyways, it was magical, but I grew up in a small town too. I didn't know if there was a vegetarian that lived in my town, they certainly didn't let it be known. Like nobody knew about it. I don't even think I knew what that word meant. Um, so I never questioned what was on my plate, but I never liked meat that resembled or reminded me of its original form. I ate the chicken nuggets, I
Yeah.
ate um, deli meats, that kind of stuff. Steak weirded me out. Even hamburgers, I wasn't really a fan of. I mean, I remember in high school or at college, everybody going to eat wings and me just being like, oh, that is just, what are you? That's so gross. There's like the little cartilage and the bone, and that's just bizarre. But I still, with the other stuff that I was eating, it didn't really register. And that was weird to me. Like looking back, that's weird to me because I was an animal lover. My family thought I was going to be a veterinarian when I was 4 because I had such a connection with animals. I mean, they were like telling my parents, like, you better be saving up for vet school, kind of thing. And I've loved animals since the moment I was born. But did like a lot of people, I rationalized it in my mind that, oh, they have a happy life. They live in a pasture. And then I never knew what it looked like when they were killed. I had no clue. So I said the typical things that people try to say to make themselves feel better. And like a lot of us, it was a documentary that kind of started things in motion, I suppose. It planted the seed because it didn't happen overnight. I watched Cowspiracy, which blew my mind. I mean, I should rewatch it. It's been so long. But that was the first one I watched, and then obviously later I feel like I've watched them all. But so I did that. But at the time, I was in my late 20s, and I was having major digestive problems, and it took about a year and a half until I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease in the GI tract. And I started down the path of learning more about nutrition and these different diets, because I found out some different people who had healed themselves or had gotten better, with what I had,
Mm-hmm.
and then I discovered all the people who had autoimmune diseases because nobody was talking about it. And then it became, people were out of the woodworks when I started telling people that, oh, I've been having some health problems, and they were like, oh, well, I have such and such, and I'm like, what? Like, everybody seemed to have issues, that I had no clue about, and I, up to that point, had
Yeah.
seemingly no problems. Clearly, I did have problems going on, because then finally it manifested itself. But so I tried every diet. I tried the specific carbohydrate diet. And in the end, I tried, well, not the end, but I ended up doing paleo, which, mind you,
Mm.
I had seen Cowspiracy, and it was a major conflict of my morals at that time. But I was like, I wanted to heal, and I thought that was the way. You make your
Sure.
bone broth. I was getting the humane bones, trying to make myself feel better. But I still, when I was making it, I was just so grossed out, and then I'd have to, extract the bones and the vegetables. Ugh, it was gross. So I was doing paleo, and I was not getting better. I traveled all the way to England. I had an alternative treatment that's not allowed in the United States because of basically money and big pharma. So I went to England. I tried basically everything. And eventually I found out that when I'd gone to England, I actually was severely anemic and could have had a heart attack and died, which I found out when I came home, because I ended up in the hospital. So I'm in the hospital, and it was at that moment I was like, I'm not doing this crap anymore. I'm not doing paleo. I'm gonna go plant-based vegan. I had a friend who was plant-based vegan, and she had healed herself. She actually had the same thing that I had, and I was like, why didn't I do that before? Or I'm gonna try this. So I was like, I can't eat animals anymore. I've watched too many things. It's definitely conflicting. Like, mentally, it was not helping me for sure.
Yeah,
Physically, it wasn't,
absolutely.
and then mentally, it was not. So I went plant based vegan, and it was not, my body was in a really, really bad state. So it took months to actually heal, and it took a lot of learning. And then I ended up going to doing some different nutrition programs. The Canadian School of Natural Nutrition has a great online program. And then I also did Cornell's plant based nutrition program to learn as much as I could. So I basically, was coming at it from both sides, obviously the nutrition aspect. And then mentally, it was more stress free and calming to be eating plants at that time
Yeah.
than eating animals. So that's kind of where it how it started, I guess.
It's funny you said that, you bought the humane bones because it made you feel better, because you bought the locally cared for. And, there are so many stories out there and myths and lies that they make up. And one of them, so my dad, who lives out even a little farther, more remote than we are, he has a neighbor who is a veterinarian. And he always brings up that, oh, my son's vegan and loves animals and rescues animals. And she says, I understand that. She said, but these animals only have really one bad day. And it's like, that's
I've
just
seen that
another
so much lately.
justification. Oh, yeah, it's crazy. It's just one more
Hmm.
justification that people use to make themselves feel better about what they're doing. Um, there's a lot that we don't know about nutrition because we're not taught it in school. It's not, we're fed the lies from the FDA. We're fed the food pyramid, the guidelines that they want us to follow. The stuff that they're serving us is not good for us. The stuff that they allow in our foods, and we'll talk about this in a few as far as some of the chemicals and carcinogens and pesticides. Um, it's incredible with your journey that you were able to heal yourself, to heal your body. I hate that you had to go through multiple iterations of things you were trying to heal yourself. It's a shame you didn't find or make that connection as your friend did to heal your body through whole food, plant based, vegan lifestyle. And they want us to be disconnected because you were always connected with animals. You had Snowball, and like you thought he was adorable and just loved feeding him and, doing those things that, felt good, because I don't know anyone that doesn't feel good after you help or rescue an animal. But they want you disconnected to think that you have to eat that. Um,
I mean, these
it's just
industries have
crazy.
they just have so much money, so now, I mean, it's just like big pharma. They're in control of everything because they are the ones who hold the strings. I mean, money talks, right? I mean, it's tale as old as time, and these industries have the most funding, so they can hire the best and the most lobbyists. They can send out all that propaganda to your kid's school, and maybe they're funding the school, or maybe they're agree to help build a gymnasium or whatever. So you can't don't these people, these industries don't want to, like whether it's a school or education or whoever, don't want to, what has the saying go, don't bite the hand that feeds you or something. Yeah. So it's kind of like that. I mean, they're not going to
Yes.
say bad things about them because then their money gets pulled.
Well, and that's part of the problem. So if you look at the FDA and the USDA, most of those are filled with former cattle and dairy executives. So of
Right.
course they're going to feed their friends. They're going to continue to funnel the money to them, regardless. I mean, they don't care about the animals, and regardless of what it does to our health or to this country. If you look down, especially if you're talking about the Carolinas, one of the big problems they have from a environmental standpoint is every time there's a hurricane or a big storm comes through, all of these lagoons of waste and feces from these factory farms runs off and drains everywhere and then is picked up by the storm. And it's just like the whole idea behind that just makes me want to throw up. I mean, I can't imagine, people seeing these, acres of just literally urine and feces from animals and
Yeah.
thinking, oh yeah, that's normal. That's okay. That's healthy.
Right.
That's good for us.
Or I don't live
It's
there, so it
heartbreaking.
doesn't matter to me. Like these,
Oh,
if you don't live there, then why does it matter?
yes. So there'll be people and people, I'll try to engage in conversations with folks trying to help them make that connection. And someone's like, I asked the question, would you live next to a CAFO, which is a centralized animal feeding operation? And I usually get the answer, well, no, I would move. Well, if you wouldn't want to live next to it, why would you condemn others to living in that environment, in that community? Because unfortunately, it you know poisons the air, poisons the ground, poisons the water, and it just that whole mentality of, oh, I don't live there, like you just said, is
Yeah, and I
real.
don't care about the other people, but the people who do live nearby it, they can't just get up and move. A lot of them are generational. That's either their family's land or their family's been there for a long time, and they're usually not from a higher up socioeconomic status, so they don't have the funds to just move. I mean, that's not an option.
Yeah. Well, and there's a reason why they pick some of these deserted areas. We have some friends, Jennifer and Rodney Barrett, that were chicken farmers out in Wicks, Arkansas, which is like 2 hours from anything. There's a reason they try to intentionally put this stuff way out in the middle of nowhere. But yeah, I mean, people
Mhm.
don't always have the means to move, but that doesn't mean they don't have the right to clean air, clean water, and not be subjected to some of these things. One of the things that you talk about a lot, so you are a certified plant-based nutritionist. And according to your Instagram profile, you come from a holistic and conscious living for the mind, body, and spirit. And I love that mentality. I love that kind of all-encompassing, you're wanting to do good for the animals, you're wanting to do good for the environment, and of course, you're wanting to do good for your body. One of the things you talk about quite a bit is glyphosate in weed killers. Um, for folks who may not know what that is, would you touch on that just a minute so they can understand what it is, what it can do to our body, and um, why we should try to avoid glyphosate in particular?
Right. So I'll say before I begin on that, the holistic that as part of my healing was it's multifaceted. It's not just one thing. You can't just say, "Oh, I'm just going to add a green smoothie to my." I mean, which that will improve everything, right? But it's just a
Sure.
little tiny. It's just a little tiny drop in the bucket. It really is the mind, body, spirit. You can eat all of the healthiest food in the world, and if you're stressed out, if you're in a bad environment, a bad relationship, still putting toxins on your body, which we'll get into, and maybe even not, and eating food, it might seem like it's healthy to you, but if it's not organic and it is sprayed with all of these herbicides and these chemicals, then it is destroying your microbiome in your gut, which houses your immunity, it houses everything. So learning all of that really, like I say, I went down a rabbit hole with nutrition because it wasn't just what you need to eat; it's also what you need to avoid, and what you need to avoid. That's not just food. So it's your skincare. I
Yes.
mean, we just don't have regulations, which I honestly don't want the government all in my business. I'm just one of those people. But at the same time, they're just letting industries run amok and include all kinds of nasty things in our products that, and food that is killing us, causing cancer, autoimmune issues, neurological problems, endocrine disruptors, like you name it. Um, and glyphosate is one of them that has been around. That basically, so glyphosate is the active ingredient in Roundup, and Roundup has been used heavily since the 1990s when Monsanto, which a lot of people recognize that name when you say it because they've been in the news a lot
Yes.
through the decades. So Monsanto created Roundup Ready seeds. So essentially, they created bioengineered their GMOs, genetically modified organisms. They modified seeds so that they could spray more toxins on the plants, and the plants would not it would not kill the plants, but it would kill the pest or kill the weeds that are nearby. So there's herbicides and then there's insecticides. But so they created this, and it was obviously widely adopted because it was touted as revolutionary to farmers. You can grow better yields, spend less time on other herbicides because, I mean, they were still using
Yeah.
toxins, but it just created a whole different landscape. And mind you, glyphosate was actually, I think, created in the 70s, but they didn't have the Roundup Ready seeds, but they knew in the 70s that glyphosate caused issues. There were already studies being done that Monsanto had done, and then the EPA, showing that it could create tumors. They didn't know much about the microbiome at that time because that word had not even been coined until I think
Sure.
2006. So they knew back then that it was possibly problematic, but they still put it out there. So we now know that glyphosate is connected to causing lymphoma. The main thing that I talk a lot about, or that I know a lot about, is the microbiome, because I had gastrointestinal issues and I
Hmm.
started learning all there was about the microbiome and how you could create a healthy microbiome. Basically, glyphosate tears down the gut lining barrier in your intestines. So your GI tract has basically the half of a strand of hair. That's how thick it is. It's very thin, and it's a barrier that basically keeps, particles, toxins, whatever is going through your GI tract. It keeps it out of your bloodstream. Glyphosate tears that apart and creates tiny holes um, basically permeates
Wow.
the tight junctions in your intestines. So particles get through, toxins get through, things that are not supposed to get in your bloodstream, and then this is why people have inflammation. That causes inflammation. It can cause other autoimmune diseases. So it's and it obviously it's destroying the body, but it's also destroying the soil. So the soil has a microbiome similar to us. I think Dr. Zach Bush, who is like, I don't know. He's amazing. He talks on the Rich Roll podcast about, I know, that was the first
Yep.
time I learned about him was on Rich Roll. I've listened to this episode, I don't know, like 3 or 4 times. It's so good. It's GMO. I think it's called GMOs, glyphosate, and gut health, maybe. Anyways, it's an epic episode. And so basically he talks about it. He explains what it does to the soil, and he explains the soil being kind of like a coral reef. I mean, it's basically like a little city with all
Yeah.
types of bacteria and organisms, and this is why you have healthy soil. Glyphosate tears that all apart. So then, in turn, we don't have as nutrient dense plants as we would. So, and even if you're eating organic, which is better, but even organic food has been found to have 0.00 4% of glyphosate because it's everywhere now. It's water
Yes.
soluble, so it's literally in everything. It's in the air, it's in the soil. They found it in Antarctica. It's everywhere.
I had read that one of the studies suggests if we stopped using glyphosate today, it would be around for 50 years or more because, like you said, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
And, people don't realize that the other problem is they still find it in, organic foods because if the farmer across the street is spraying his stuff with it, even if you have an organic field next to you, they're still getting that runoff. They're still getting that into their crops as well. And,
Exactly.
if you start talking about it being absorbed into rainwater and dumped onto other fields like that's, a big part of the problem. And I don't know what the answer is because it seems like, we can talk about this, we can educate people, we can inform people, we can reach out to our representatives, but until someone has enough money to stand up to the lobbyists of Monsanto and stop this kind of stuff, I don't know how to change it. And
I don't.
it's frustrating.
Yeah, I think it's because they don't have an alternative. I mean, there's obviously the money aspect, but I think about DDT, which was revolutionary in the 40s and the 50s
Yeah.
as killing mosquitoes and curbing malaria or whatever. Um, they basically, I guess, because maybe it was easier to just completely stop use of it because it wasn't linked to your food. I don't know I don't know. They never came up with an alternative to DDT really, but I don't know. I mean, obviously there's the money aspect, but which is number one. But
A lot of times with anything, if you follow the money, especially when you're talking about, if you're reading research or reading studies about things, if you follow the money to see who's funding it, that generally will also tell you which way something may or may not be slanted. You brought up DDT, which, there's a reason why we stopped spraying our kids with it, especially with the way they used to in the 50s. It's, I don't have the answer, but it is just maddening that this is going on. And most people are, to be honest with you, they're kind of, blindly unaware of some of the stuff they're eating. When you start talking about, people like I quoted one of your posts that you have up here, how people are so afraid of germs, but they'll gladly consume carcinogens, pesticides, toxins, and chemicals in their foods, drinks, skincare every single day without batting an eye. So many people don't take the time to research what they're putting in their body, let alone what they're putting on their body. And I think it's that some people have this blanket trust in the government is always going to do right and protect us and wouldn't let this product be out there if it wasn't good enough for our bodies. So how do you help people correlate, you know, finding this information and then making changes to find safer alternatives to use for both, on your body or food consumption in particular?
I mean, it always goes back to education. A lot of times, unfortunately, people don't seek out information or changing their lifestyle unless something bad happens. I mean, granted, that was
Yeah,
me. I mean, I was living. I mean, I ate what I thought was healthy, and it probably was on the healthier side of the standard American diet, but it was still not good for me. Um, but had I not had something traumatic happen, I think it would have been slower. I think I would have gotten here. I think it would have just been slower. I probably wouldn't be where I am now. Maybe,
sure.
I don't know. I mean, we'll never know. But yeah, and I was under that mentality too for most of my life. I was a product junkie. Like, I love skincare, I love lotions and potions, I love makeup, I love all that kind of stuff. And but I never thought anything about what was in it and that it would be possibly harming me. I thought, well, if it's on the shelves, exactly, like, it has to be safe. The government wouldn't allow a company to put stuff that's not safe on the shelves to sell to me. Little did I know that's completely wrong. They basically just let industry do what they want. And they said, because they can't handle it all anyway, the FDA tells companies that they need to do their own testing. Well, who do you think they're going to get? They're going to get
Yeah.
somebody who says that it's fine. Like, so I don't know. It's education, but then it's also educating people on alternatives. Because if you just say, oh, this is bad and this is bad, this is bad. Okay, well, I need something to replace it with. Like, what is a good
Yeah.
company? What do I need to look for on the back? I mean, you know, looking on the back of products, if the list, is like, I don't know, 20 lines or something, especially on, well, food for sure should not be like that. And trying to eat as whole
No.
food, as natural a state as possible is obviously going to be the healthiest. Anything packaged is, even if it's organic, is still, it should still be a treat.
Yeah, I think a lot of people. I think you brought up a great point in that not we shouldn't just be saying, "Oh, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad." We need to help inform and educate people. Okay, here are what you should be eating or should be using, and I think it's important to educate people because no one likes to be told, you're doing it wrong or you're doing something bad for yourself without, a little bit of information of why. And unfortunately, like you just brought up again, that, unfortunately the government is not going to be there because the FDA literally can't handle this. And if they're allowing these industries to provide their own testing information, it's like, I mean, they're going to get what they want because they're paying for it. So the
Yeah,
favorable outcomes. One of the things that bothers me with the whole, skincare and beauty routines and stuff is I think I won't say it's intentional, but I feel it's an attack on women because as a guy, I am fortunate enough that I am not judged as harshly as women are for you know their youthfulness and their I don't know how to word this, looking youthful and healthy, to where I don't have to have a skincare product line and I don't have to do all these things. And
yeah,
sure, I can if I'd like to, but it's almost like we've put women on this different standard than men have, and it's absolute
100%.
bullshit in itself. And then we're subjecting these women to all these products that are oh yeah, it may reduce the sagging under your eyes, but it's going to give you skin cancer and cause other issues. So it's like it's almost like this is a war on women on top of
It
everything else
is.
that's going on.
I mean, all the time, and our culture tries to pray. We try to claim that we're becoming way more open to, I don't know, to women aging gracefully, or just aging in general. Screw the graceful, maybe you should just age. I don't know. Like, um, but then we're not. And then people still, I don't look at, I don't have normal television or any of that kind of stuff, but I'm sure that there's still those channels that pick apart people's outfits and how they look and all this kind of stuff. And it's just perpetuating, that horrible side of our society. Um, and I mean, it's hard. I mean, especially when you're raised in a certain era that,
Yeah.
you know, these things matter, I guess. it would be nice to just be able
I
to wake
think
up and just, you know,
not
go.
care.
I
um,
know.
I think that clearly women, I think, are targeted more so and judged more harshly on that. But, even as society, so, I've got more than enough gray in my beard to, laugh at, and there are products out there that I could cover that, but I don't want to put that chemical on my body.
No.
Obviously the women are generally more judged more stringently, whether it be that they have grays in their hair or whatever the case may be, and I think that's something we got to change. And I'm at the point where I'm comfortable in my life that it's easy for me to say, well, I just don't care about the gray in my beard. I'm not going to do anything about it. If someone has a problem with it, I can talk to my wife. She'll deal with it. So,
Yeah.
I just, it's
And for
sad.
men, it's more, when you get gray, when a man
It's
gets gray,
acceptable.
it's like, oh, wow, he's wise. He's older and wiser, But
Yeah.
if a woman does, it's like, oh, she's over the hill now.
Yep. She's done.
She's
Uh,
done. She
and
can't provide
that's,
anything for society.
that is,
Back to your point about the skincare, though, and I have said this for years. I think you know women are more likely to have autoimmune issues, and I think that there's definitely a connection to the fact that by the time a lot of girls are
hmm,
14 or 13, they're already using at least like lotions or whatever, or they're really into like hair
yeah,
products or something, or shampoo. It doesn't matter, and so they're slathering themselves with these
tampons,
things. Yeah, oh God, awful, terrible,
100%,
terrible. Just
100%.
soaking in.
And
I know,
my
soaking in
wife
the
and I,
toxin.
so I'm probably one of the only guys on the planet that, I know what tampons my wife uses, and they're, I can go get them
Mhm.
at the store. They're organic. And we've talked
Wow,
about why, because, so many people don't even realize that women are using these toxic products inside their body. And what kind of transfer do you think is going on down there? When you put a
it's so
toxic
porous.
product in, oh my
Yeah,
God. So
yeah.
we could talk about that. I mean, that and other things that, um,
Yeah,
just
and glyphosate is in them. So you're just absorbing, I mean, that's just one thing because if they're cotton, they're conventional cotton, which cotton is one of the dirtiest plants, sadly. Um,
yeah.
it has so many pests, so they have to use so many insecticides and herbicides on it. Um, I wish that we would do more bamboo because or hemp. Hemp is like literally there's it doesn't need to be. I mean, you do get organic, but
Yes.
it doesn't even need to be organic in that it doesn't have any pest. Like it can just grow, and it grows really fast. So I wish that we would use more hemp stuff, but there's a whole connection with that in the
There's
government.
no question. Oh yeah,
That's a
they're
whole other
gonna they're gonna
podcast.
hold that down as much as they can.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a different podcast, but
yeah,
it's worthy of a conversation, especially if you're talking about from an environmental standpoint and the things that, we can reduce the impact on the environment. And it is such a hardy, robust crop that. It grows much quicker and we can harvest it. And there's so many things that they can make from hemp and bamboo for that matter.
hmm
So there's just so many more things that we can start doing better. And I think one of the biggest things like you do is you educate and try to highlight these things and try to, get people to think about, what they're putting in their body, what they're using on their body. And I think that is so important. So I really appreciate your messaging and what you do for, getting that information out there. And I wish more people would hear some of the stuff you're saying, and then not just hear it, but take action behind it. Because it's one thing to listen to a podcast and listen to, someone's information, but if you don't take action upon that, is kind of why were you listening or reading that?
right.
If these are things that bother you, I would highly suggest that, folks check out. So one of the things that, you have going on, you have your Instagram page is the Refined Hippie. What was your thinking behind that when you created that name? Because I get all asked, where did you
All
come up
right.
with the vegan sheepdog? So where did the Refined Hippie come from?
Yeah, so I love your name. I think I asked you about your name on my
You
podcast.
did.
You were on my podcast. And people ask me about mine too. It was basically when I started down the path of learning more holistic health stuff. I started making like kombucha and just like doing doing certain things that my friends or acquaintances were like, you do what? Just like they were surprised. And then I started calling myself, I was like, well, I'm a refined hippie because I do still, I look a certain way and I dress a certain way. And so, but, and in my heart, I'm a hippie. I mean, I love plants. I love the earth. I love animals. I love natural products. I mean, very
Yeah.
hippie-ish. I don't smell like what a stereotypical hippie would, people have hippie and they see this like dirty, grungy, stoner person, which who
Woodstock. Yeah.
perpetuated that stigma, who perpetuated that stereotype was the government. So they're not all like that. You don't have to
Yes.
be, adverse to bathing to be a hippie, I think, at heart. So I started basically saying, I was like, well, I'm a refined hippie. So, and then when I was like, okay, I want to have a website, I want to have, share my recipes that I was making. I was doing, I used to share a lot more recipes than I do now. But so that was it. I mean, it was pretty easy when I was like, well, this is going to be the name, the Refined Hippie.
That's awesome. Yeah. And when you find something that just fits who you are and it's just,
Yeah,
literally who you are, it's not, it's not hard to put that out there and people see the genuine nature of, the content you put out there, the stuff that you share. So I really do appreciate that.
yes.
You had mentioned that you had asked me about my name on my podcast. So why don't you plug your podcast a minute and let people know where they can check it out? And we can go ahead and talk about that for a minute.
Absolutely. So my podcast is the Refined Hippie Podcast. It is on all things Apple, Google, Stitcher, Spotify. A new season has started, so I'm doing seasons now. I was doing the podcast for 2 years straight, every single day, or not every single day. Ooh, I'm not Joe Rogan. Every single week. No, I'm not. Yeah, I wish. No, that sounds stressful. So I was doing it once a week for 2 years, and
Yeah.
basically for my own mental health, I was like, I'm going to do seasons. So a new season has started. I talk about all different topics, or pretty much anywhere from, holistic skincare, glyphosate, gut health, autoimmune diseases, animal activism, animal agriculture. I mean, I talk about all the things that interest me, and
Yes.
hopefully they'll interest other people as well.
I think it's important when you're doing something that interests you, and then it's great when other people follow along that have that same interest or passion. So that's kind of why I started how it all began, and I wanted to share people's stories about what it was for them that helped them make that connection. So I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story, sharing your journey, and I think if we could get more people to have conversations like this, to be able to have a conversation about, the animals and what happens to them, because as you and I talked about in the beginning of this podcast, is that most people don't know. Most people are so disconnected, and the industries don't want people to know what happens to these animals. So from my standpoint, I started my journey to be vegan for the animals. And now that we've become more educated on health and that aspect of this journey, we're working more on focusing on more whole food, plant-based. Um, I think if we can encourage more people to start looking at, what the animals are going through, what it causes to our body, and what it causes to the environment by supporting these industries, I think we can get more people to wake up and start their journey. If you could have told yourself sooner, autoimmune issues aside, in that part of your journey, what kind of message or what would you have told yourself? Let I don't know. Maybe you'd have told yourself, while you were feeding Snowball, what would you have told your younger self, to start this journey sooner? What I don't know. What would you like to share, or what could you share
No.
with someone that may encourage them?
Well, if I was trying to tell my much younger self when I was like 10, I think having that conversation is a little more difficult than when it would be an adult. You don't want to
Sure.
totally traumatize them.
Traumatize them.
um, because that's why it's wrong, because if it would traumatize a child, um, it doesn't traumatize a child to go out to a field and pull out carrots, or go pick
Yeah.
strawberries. Like, so it's wrong to the human soul, the human spirit, whatever. If it would traumatize a child to know where their food actually came from. So, I mean, if I was trying to tell my adult self, I would probably just encourage them to watch the documentaries before, um, because I didn't like to be told anything what to do. But like I said, I didn't know anybody who was vegan or vegetarian. I think if I had been exposed to somebody who was, I think that I would have done it much sooner. But I didn't know anybody, so until I was literally in my
Sure.
mid 20s, that was when I met somebody who was vegetarian, or at least told me that I was aware that they were vegetarian. Um,
Yeah.
so I think that that's like one of the best ways to to help someone is to find a documentary that's not like Earthlings or something, because that's down the line. You can watch that one because that is very
Yeah.
intense.
I think, obviously that documentary Earthlings, it is very powerful, but it is hard to view. It's hard to watch. It's hard to, because emotionally, most people are connected to animals enough that, they watch a documentary like Earthlings and are emotionally bothered by that. And,
Yeah,
it's not one of my first, for someone who is quasi curious and wants a little more information. That's usually not where I start them, because
yeah, yeah.
my concern is that they'll just turn it off and they'll just say, "Yeah, that's too much. I'm not interested in that." So,
I'd rather
yeah,
just
and
not know about
when you
it.
talk about,
They just
yeah, they would rather. I hear people say, "Well, ignorance is bliss," and I say, "No, it's just ignorance." Um,
no.
you brought up talking to kids. I think it's so important to, talk to them in a way that, we don't want to traumatize them. Obviously, we don't want to show them the gruesome, practices inside these industries, but I think it's important to tell them that, that nothing happy happens in a Happy Meal. And, these chicken nuggets were once a chicken that was running across, somewhere, and explaining those things to them in context that they're able to understand. So that, that can be a delicate dance for sure, but I think it's an important conversation. But so, Rebecca, where can people check you out? Where can people follow you? Where can people find your podcast? I know you had mentioned that earlier, but let everybody know where they can follow your page and all your information, that if they like what they heard today, that they can check you out and follow along with the Refined Hippie.
Yeah, I am on Instagram at the Refined Hippie. I also have a website, which is therefinedhippie.com. So I do post all of my podcast episodes on there. I also have recipes, blog articles about different things, glyphosate, skincare. Um, so yeah, that's where you can find me for the most part. I'm not on anything else. I'm not on TikTok. It's not going to happen. Um, and
Come
I'm just
on.
thinking. Are you on? Oh my god, I forgot you're on there, aren't you?
I am. Yeah. And the odd part is I have a love hate relationship with TikTok, because my audience is growing pretty quickly over there, quicker than what Instagram or Facebook grew.
Yeah, I'm not growing at all.
But they love
See,
anytime someone complains about anytime they complain about something that they, um, if someone posts a complaint about one of my videos, I get hammered with a community guideline over anything, and it's like,
what?
damn, like, oh, it's terrible. And I don't post terrible stuff, and I don't say terrible things, but if
Yeah.
someone complains about it, they have no problem taking my videos down. And one of the videos they took down was talking about some of the food processing plants that have had either damaged or been destroyed here over the last 6 months to a year, that no one's talking about. And I took a
Mm-hmm.
news clip of a major news network and shared it, and they said that was, and it was just, it wasn't anyone arguing, it was the literal news clip, and they said it was divisive speech. And it's like, it's the truth,
Just
it's what's going
censorship.
on. And oh,
Just
100%.
censoring.
So
Yeah.
I enjoy it because there's lots of funny, stupid stuff on there, but and it's a decent platform to reach people, but I get frustrated from that standpoint too. So, but
Yeah. I mean,
we'll,
I just got a message from Instagram the other day about a story post that I did like a year ago. It was I had shared somebody else's post or story or whatever, and it's like, if you keep doing this, we're gonna shut down your account. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, that was a year ago anyways. And and it was true, whatever it was, whatever was posted. Oh, I got in trouble.
That's
I got in trouble for a post about aloe vera, that it cleans the air and all this stuff, and I got flagged for that. I got flagged for that. It was a year. It was like it was a story. It wasn't even a post. I got flagged for it, and they said that that was partly false because there were other plants that also clean the air. Well, I
oh
didn't say that
my
there were no other
god.
ones. I just said this one does. I didn't say this is the only one. It's so weird. Ugh, I could. That's a whole another episode too. It's just censorship.
That's
It's
another
not.
episode, yes. So we'll
Not
talk
even,
about that on the next episode.
yeah.
um, Man, yeah, that could start a whole conversation.
I mean, it's almost
Um,
comical though. It was like aloe
yeah,
vera, really, and then it was the reasoning was because it was partly false because fact checkers had found that there were other plants that also clean the air. Yep,
like
those fact checkers.
you can't make that up. Like I just
No. Oh
I
man.
I think oftentimes it's they don't want positive truth getting out there, and it's frustrating for sure. And I get things taken down regularly because apparently I'm I'm offensive. So, but I'm going to keep doing
You're
me,
so
and
offensive.
I appreciate I appreciate what you do and all the content you do put out there, even when they don't take it down. So,
Well, likewise.
Rebecca,
I
thank you. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I appreciate you and I
Well, I just
appreciate,
wanted to
all
say,
the content you create. Sorry.
well,
It's-
we're, it's going to take all of us. It's going to take all of our platforms to connect with as many people as we can. So, I think we need more voices and content creators. And I think one of the most important things I could stress to anyone who is on the fence of putting content and their life out there, because there's a lot of life, like just like your kitchen renovation, there's personal parts of our lives, like my family and I, like we put a lot of stuff out there with my wife and the kids, and we go to sanctuaries and rescues. If there's anyone that is considering starting or sharing, just be yourself, just be genuine, put your authentic self out there, and the people who like that will be attracted to that and follow you and support you. And I think that speaks volumes to your character, the content that you put out there. I appreciate your passion for all of this, and we need more people talking about some of these things. And I'm not everyone's cup of tea, and I talk about that a lot. But there are some people out there that appreciate the messaging I put out just as the messaging you create. So just put information out there that is real in your life, and share those things that are important to you, and hopefully it'll help others wake up and start their journey. So
yeah.
do you have any parting words of wisdom that you'd like to share with everybody?
Well, I was just gonna say that I agree, and that I think that your demeanor is so calm, which I think is kind of refreshing because definitely in the vegan world, there's a lot of people who are basically yelling at people to not do something, and I don't think that I think that we need different types of activism for sure, or different types of
Yes.
personalities because your message and the way you present it is going to affect somebody differently than somebody who is yelling or showing just the horrific images, and every person is different in how that how they're going to receive that information, so I appreciate your your position on that. So
I totally agree with you that different people need to hear different messages. There are times for planting seeds and a time for yelling and screaming. The important part to me that I feel, and this is just my opinion, this isn't putting any other activists down. It's important to know the difference when to be planting seeds, when to be yelling and screaming. There's no question what happens in these industries to these animals. We should all be yelling and screaming.
I
But
know.
unfortunately, most people turn off when they hear that. And I don't care what your message is. If you're yelling at me, that this is me, this is how I receive information. If you're yelling at me, I'm probably not really listening to what you have to say. So
I'm
that's
gonna walk
kind of
away.
why, yeah, that's kind of why I handle and present myself the way I do. I try to talk to folks the way I wish someone would have talked to me. but I know there are people out there that they do good work and they do things and they have a different approach, and that's fine because different people need different messaging. So it's very important that we share as much information as we can and encourage people to start their journey. So Rebecca, thanks for joining me this morning. Thanks for getting up early and joining me so we could have
Thank you
this
for having me.
conversation. I hope people will definitely check out the Refined Hippie and the Refined Hippie podcast. You have a lot of solid content that is important, and I appreciate you and what you do, and look forward to see episodes and seasons to come for your podcast. And again, if you guys have not already, make sure you go over to Instagram and check out the Refined Hippie or refinedhippie.com, the refinedhippie.com. And then,
So
of course,
refined.
the Refined Hippie podcast. Check that out. I just, thank you again. I appreciate it and look forward to seeing what's to come. So hope you have a good one.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.